District Parliamentarian. Ooh, welcome everybody to the 34th District Parliamentarian webinar. We're a couple minutes early, so we'll start in just a second, but I did want to show you really quickly. And now I can't. We're live, and this is new, and this is exciting. So this is our first time, so please be gentle. All right, so here's what I'm going to show you is how to contact us if you have a question or a comment, or you just want to say hello or good job or speak louder. Anything that you need, you can either email to me at hipolito@gmail.com, or you can text me at 661-755-7585. And my fabulous assistant, my husband, Ron, is going to be here feeding me your questions. If you're watching this later and it's not live, but we didn't answer a question of yours, please feel free to reach out to me in either of these two ways so that we can get your question answered, because that's really important. That's the whole point of doing this. So it is just about 7 o'clock. All right, so hi, my name is Heather Ippolito. I'm the 34th District Parliamentarian, and I'm so excited that you've joined us here tonight. This is our very first webinar. We're trying this out. We're going to see how it goes, but we're thrilled that you are here to join us tonight. So we're going to start with some things that I get a lot of questions about as the 34th District Parliamentarian. But if as we're going along, something comes to mind that you want to talk about, there's a question that you have, parliamentary procedure really encompasses every part of PTA because we sit in meetings all the time, whether it's an executive board meeting or an association meeting or a committee meeting or a school site council meeting. We're in meetings all the time, and so having a good understanding of parliamentary procedure, bylaws, meetings, emotions, all those kinds of things is really helpful for everybody on the executive board. So I'm hoping that out there in the great wide world tonight, we don't only have parliamentarians. I'm hoping that we have other executive board members as well, committee members. And remember, if you can't watch this live, or if you know of people who couldn't watch this live, you'll be able to click on this same link, and I'm getting updates, and we have 3 people viewing. I'm so excited. But you'll be able to click on the link and watch this whole thing in its entirety. So we are going to start with something that's very dear to my heart, and people laugh when I talk about it, but it's the bylaws. The bylaws are where PTA really begins. These are the rules, the policies and procedures that we operate by. And so it's very important that not only everyone on your executive board has a copy of your most recent bylaws, but that you keep them updated. You have to update your bylaws at least every 3 years. And it's really recommended that when your new executive board comes on, that you all take a look at your bylaws, because things change over time. We all know that. Sometimes, you know, it made sense to meet every month for an association meeting at one time for your PTA, but now we have parents who are busy and they can't come and meet every month. So maybe, you know, changing your meetings to an every other month format might work for you. The minimum number of association meetings you have to have is 3, and that's pretty manageable for anybody, but most schools like to meet more often just to keep in contact with their families. So when you review your bylaws, you need to think about your parent population, you need to think about your PTA as a whole and what you're doing. So it's really important that you go through and update and revise at least every 3 years, if not more often than that. So your bylaws will look something like this. Visual aids, isn't that great? A lot of people say to me, I don't understand this date here. This current copy that I'm holding says revised June 2015. This does not mean that your bylaws are good 3 years from this date. This date means nothing to the man on the street, to the man who's holding the bylaws. This date is just when they printed this edition of the bylaws. It has nothing to do with when your bylaws were approved. The place you look at to see when your bylaws were approved is back on page 22, and it is right down here, and I'm sorry that, isn't this great? The date that the state parliamentarian signs your bylaws, that's when your 3 years begins. So this is the date that you pay attention to. Ignore the date on the front. It doesn't mean anything to anybody, and that's not the date that we look at when we're talking about 3 years to revise your bylaws. It's that date on page 22. All right, so really quickly, I am going to try to pull up a new screen. So again, bear with me. All right, and I'm going to escape out of that. I want to show you the difference between the two parts of the bylaws, and I'm hoping that you can see that. I'm looking for confirmation that you can see that from my director.
I'm on a 30-second delay because I'm watching you on the YouTube channel.
Okay, so I'm hoping that you will be able to see this. Bylaws have two parts. The first part is the main 20 pages of your bylaws. And then at the very end are your standing rules. And there is one page that's printed by the state. But other than that, the standing rules are really where you get to personalize your bylaws. So here's a brief illustration of the two parts of the bylaws. The bylaws that you see in the packet, pages 1 through 22, have very few things that you can change. Most of it is just fill in the blank where you say, you know, we're going to have our association meetings in months August, September, October, November, December, etc. But the standing rules, it's where you say where are you going to have your meetings, when are you going to have your meetings. We're going to have our meetings on the campus of Meadows School in the NPR. Or we're going to have our meetings in the library of Leona Cox at 5:30 p.m. or 8 a.m., whatever your time is. The standing rules are where you give those details. So in the example that I have here, it says, in the bylaws, it mainly states that we have a vice president of Ways and Means. That is one of our vice presidents. In the standing rules, you actually explain what that person does. They oversee the walkathon, the book fair, restaurant nights, all those good things. Your standing rules, I know that anybody who's come to any of my trainings has heard me say that you really, really should consider spending some good time with your standing rules, because that's where you talk about things that are specific to your unit. How do you count money? Where do you store it? How do you do your awards? Do you do honorary service awards, or is there something really special that you've always done with awards? Do you have a tradition in your PTA that you don't want people to forget about 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, 20 years down the road? Your standing rules is a really great place to put those things. So again, I'm back up on the standing rules. I'm preaching the importance of the standing rules. So please take some time to consider updating your standing rules. Put some job descriptions in there. Put who reports to whom, so that if there's any question, it's all written out in your bylaws and you have that for people to look at. All right, and oops, and I'm going on to something else. Okay, so I also wanted to talk to you about exactly what happens to your bylaws and exactly how, when you decide to update them, how the procedure goes. And this is a really confusing thing to a lot of people, but it's not terribly confusing. There's this lovely flow chart that the California State PTA has given to us. So my PTA unit has decided that Susan, I love you. You are amazing, and I'm so glad that you're on here. So thank you for the shout out. She just sent me a text. So I know someone's out there watching, so thank you. Anyway, back to the bylaw unit review process. So your unit has decided that your bylaws are no longer meeting your needs. You used to meet once a month, and that's just too much. You're overwhelming your parents, and you'd like to change that. So the president contacts the parliamentarian and says, you know what, we need to form a bylaw committee. So in the executive board, you as the parliamentarian say, the president has asked for a bylaw committee. I'm looking for 3 to 5 volunteers to look through the bylaws with me. Hopefully you will get 3 to 5 people to volunteer. Your president can absolutely sit on that committee and participate with you. So you as the bylaw committee go have a meeting where you sit somewhere on campus or in Starbucks or at someone's home, and you look through line by line of the bylaws and make changes that you think better reflect the people that you serve. Then you as the parliamentarian bring those changes back to the executive board and say, the bylaw committee talked about it. We would like to change our meetings to every other month. We would like to lower our dues. We think that $10 per person is too much. We would like to lower it to $8 to increase more people to join. All of the changes that the bylaw committee discussed, you present to the executive board. The executive board, in good executive board fashion, talks about it, debates it, and then approves those changes and says, yes, we agree that those things need to be changed. You as the parliamentarian then go into e-bylaws, which I'm going to show you in just 1 minute, make the changes, and then you are going to print 3 copies, 3 double-sided, preferably hole-punched and stapled, because that makes everybody's life easier, copies of the entire bylaw packet. All 22 pages of the bylaws and however many pages your standing rules are, you make those copies, 3 of them. In addition to that, you also make 4 double-sided copies of your signature page. And the signature page is that page that I showed you. It's usually page 21 and 22. We need 4 separate copies of just that signature page. And the bylaw submittal form, which I am going to attempt to show you real quickly here. All right, welcome back. I'm still here. So this is the bylaw submittal sheet. I can email this to you. It's completely fillable. And what you do is you go in and you fill in all of your school's important information, all of your numbers that you can find inside your bylaws. And then at the back, and this one is sort of half filled in, you put where you made the changes. On page 6, Article 10, we changed blah, blah, blah. This makes my life and the state parliamentarian's life so much easier because we have your last copy and we sit there and we compare the two, and I compare the two and look at the changes and see how much, you know, are you raising your dues by $10? Are you lowering them by 3? Have you added 12 vice presidents? Oh my goodness, that's a lot. So I look at your old bylaws and this list and your new bylaws and compare the two. The state parliamentarian actually just uses this. She doesn't have a copy of your old bylaws. She uses this and she goes page by page to make sure that you have changed things in a way that state PTA deems as appropriate. So this is something that you need to have on the front of all 3 of those double-sided copies that you send to me. And now I'm going to go back to, okay, so, oh my gosh, I went the wrong way. So you send those to your council parliamentarian. Right now, I think that all 3 councils, Santa Clarita, North Antelope Valley, and South Antelope Valley, all have parliamentarians. So you would send all of those things to them. They will review it, and they will send it, and of course the dog starts barking. Welcome to my home. They will send that to the district parliamentarian, who at the moment is me. I review it, and I send them to the state office. I know on the bylaw submittal page that it shows that you have the address to send it straight to the state. But let me tell you this. If you decide to bypass council and district and send it straight to the state yourself, they're going to send it straight back to you. And it will add 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks onto the process. So please, please, please Trust me, this process works. It is going much faster now than it has in years past. So if you as the unit send it to your council, then the council will send it to your district, then it will go to the state. The state parliamentarian, who happens to live in Santa Clarita, yay, Kathleen, she looks at them, signs them, and then she sends them back to the district parliamentarian, who sends them back to council, and then the council delivers them back to your unit, back to your school. Now, the reason why we ask for 4 signature pages is because council keeps one. Oh, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. I need to stop. The reason we ask for 3 copies of the bylaws is council gets a copy, district gets a copy, and then the unit has one what they call wet copy, so an official copy that has been in the hands of the state parliamentarian, that has been signed by him or her. So it's really important that you send all 3. The reason why we ask for 4 signature pages is because council gets one, district gets one, and then there are 2 that come back to your unit so that your president and your parliamentarian can have a signature page in addition to that wet copy, that whole copy of the bylaws that stays with your secretary. Now, I know the parliamentarians want to hold on to that themselves, but your original wet copy needs to go to your secretary. They are the official holder of this document. So once it comes back to you, if the state had any suggestions, you will need to discuss those with your executive board. And then you must give your association 30 days notice before you vote on the changes to the bylaws. So if I got my bylaws back today, I would not be able to vote on them until November 1. So I have to give my units that 30 days notice that we're going to talk about bylaws and we're going to present some changes to them. The parliamentarian stands up at the association meeting, reads the changes. That's why that bylaw submittal form is really cool, because the changes are already there. And so all they have to do is read off the back and say, we added a vice president, we lowered our dues, we changed our meeting dates. Read that. Then the chair of the meeting, who's usually your president, calls for discussion. And then they call for a vote. If your bylaws are approved, then your president and your secretary stop what they're doing and sign the bylaws. They sign those signature pages. The signature pages, 2 of them, get returned to your council parliamentarian so that the council parliamentarian keeps one and the district parliamentarian keeps the second copy. So now, from that date that the parliamentarian from the state signed them, that is your official 3 years to have your bylaws. Now, I did get a question, and we're high tech. We're doing Post-it notes because my husband is monitoring all the tech over there. If we are only changing standing rules, do we need to make 3 copies to go up the chain of command? No, you don't. However, we do ask the council parliamentarians all would like a copy of your standing rules, and they will forward them up the chain to the district parliamentarian, because the council and the district like to keep a complete copy of your bylaws so that if we get a question from someone on your board, we have the most recent copy that we can refer to, or if, heaven forbid, everybody at your school, their house burns down at the same time and you don't have any copies left of your bylaws, we would have a copy and we would be able to give that to you. I know it's a very random scenario and hopefully that will never happen, but no, you do not need to go all the way up the chain to change your standing rules. However, when your 3 years are up, you will need to send all those new standing rules up with the copy of your 22-page bylaws. So I'm hoping that I answered that question for you. All right, so talking about bylaws, you can do your bylaws by hand on this paper thing, but it looks terrible, and that system is about to go. So we're trying to move everybody into e-bylaws. So I wanted to show you really quickly how to log into e-bylaws. So I'm going to go to capta.org. Did it switch? I don't know if I hit yes. I might have been bad about this.
We're still in the 30-second delay, so I'll know in about 15
Oh,
seconds.
you know what? I think I did it now. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm still learning how to shift between things. So if you go to capta.org, this is the resource for all things PTA, especially in the state of California. You can find the toolkit online. You can find forms online. You can find reflections, paperwork, and inspiration. You can find pretty much anything that you need. But to get to bylaws, I just go to the top and search e-bylaws, and then down here you'll see that it's the third little blue e-bylaws. You click on read more, and if you are new to e-bylaws and you don't have a login, the first thing that you're going to do is click on this top yellow box here, this mustard colored box. It says request a username and password. The state is really, really good about getting you a username and password, usually within 24 to 48 hours during the business week. If you request it on the weekend, you usually have to wait until Monday to receive it. But your president and your parliamentarian both could have logins to the e-bylaw system. A little side note here, if you have past parliamentarians who still have access to e-bylaws, you can let me know, and I can contact the state and have them remove past parliamentarians from there, just so we kind of keep it clean. The state doesn't have a way of knowing who is still a parliamentarian and who isn't. So if you know that, you know, Mrs. Smith, who was the parliamentarian before you, she still has a username and a password, we can absolutely get her out of the system so that you are the only one, you as the parliamentarian and your president are the only ones who still have access. So after you have a username and password, you're going to click on this second one, which is Access e-bylaws, and it's going to take you to a separate page that looks just like this, and this is where you're going to put in your username and your password that the state gave you. So I'm going to click on a different tab because I don't want you to see my username and password. Oh, and of course it expired, so lovely. Okay, so that didn't work out quite the way I wanted to. So you're going to log in. All right, and because I am the district parliamentarian, I can actually see all the schools, but I'm going to click to the school that the unit that I actually am the parliamentarian for, and I'm going to click on bylaws. And so then it takes me to a screen where I can see all of their information. So let's say that they changed their dues, and instead of charging $8, they want to charge $6. This is where you highlight and you change. You have to, oh, not 600, nobody would like that. If you hit next, it's going to say, wait a minute, your bylaw information isn't complete. So I need to go back and I need to save that. So it will not let me move on until I've saved that. So I'm going to actually go back to $8 so I don't confuse everybody. All right, and now you're going to go next. You're going to look, do we still have an executive vice president? Yes. We don't have a corresponding secretary, but if we changed it, all we would have to do is move that over, but we're going to keep that as a no. Anytime you click and make changes, it's going to say the bylaw information is not complete, and it's going to make you save it. So once you go all the way through and you put all your information in, this is basically a fill in the blank, you're going to click on bylaws again. And it's going to say build bylaw PDF for printing, and you hit yes. And then what happens is it does for you, and I'm going to pull it up so you can see it, it does everything on your bylaws. So here is the Leona Cox, which is the school that my daughter goes to. This is their new bylaw document, and all of the information that I typed in there is now in there. So you can see, if I click forward, that their dues are $8. Just all that good information is there. All right, so e-bylaws is a really, really great resource for you. Also, just so you know, down here at the very bottom on the CAPTA page is an e-bylaws worksheet. This is a godsend for your bylaw committee because it has the fill in the blanks that you have to fill in the blank to make your bylaws complete. These are really the only things that you can change in your bylaws are these questions that it's asking you. And it tells you, as you can see here, where you put this information. So the membership dues goes on page 3, the nominating committee procedures goes on pages 5 and 6. So you can see it all here. And all you have to do is print these 2 pages with your bylaw committee, fill in these things, go sit down in eBylaws, and you're done. You've done all that. So I'm going to go back to CAPTA because I love CAPTA. All right, and now I think we're back. Oh my goodness. Okay, we're getting the hang of this. Okay, so I think that that's all with bylaws for now. I'm planning on doing another webinar in the future where we go through the bylaws page by page because it's a fascinating document. It's a really important document, and so it's something that everybody on your executive board and in your PTA, quite frankly, should understand. So that's something that you know, if this works and if you guys are enjoying the webinars, we will try that in the future. All right, so the next thing that I wanted to talk about is parliamentary procedure. Why do we use it? Why is it important? And this is important for everybody on your board. So I am going to go, that is not the one I want. We're going to find where it is. Okay, here we go. All right. And here it is. So the reason why parliamentary procedure is important is because we need order in our meetings. We've all been in those meetings where it's complete and total chaos. You know, people are screaming, everybody's talking at the same time, no one's paying any attention to what's happening. We need that order in our meetings. Parliamentary procedure also gives equal opportunity. It gives both sides of the argument a chance to speak. It gives everybody in the room a chance to state their opinion. And that doesn't mean that if you're at an association meeting that you have to let all 100 people in your meeting say something. But if someone in that meeting did want to say something, you need to give them the chance to say it. It promotes justice. It allows the right of the minority to be heard and the right of the majority to decide. And that's why we bring everything we do to the association as the final say. Because the executive board, while they are representative, hopefully, of your school, the majority of your members need to be the ones who are making the final decisions. And this way it takes a lot of the burden off of you as the executive board because you've come to them with recommendations and suggestions, and now they're going to decide and they're going to make that final call as to whether or not, you know, we hold a fall festival or whether we change the family dance into a mother, son, father, daughter thing. You're giving them that final say, and so you don't have to be the one to take away the father-daughter dance. The majority of the association decided that. They decided that a family dance was a better fit for their campus right now. So the next thing that we need to talk about is part of this order is having motions in your meetings. And this is done really, really formally some places, like at the PTA convention, which, little side note and commercial, I think that all of you should plan to attend. It is an amazing experience. It's a great time to bond with your PTA. It is, you hear some of the most amazing motivational speakers. We heard from astronaut Mae Jemison last year. You get to network with people from all around the state and all around the country, and you get to see how state PTA operates, and you get to be a part of what they're doing. So in our association meetings, and especially in our executive board meetings, we kind of do this on a smaller scale than they do at state convention. But the first thing that you need to do if you are going to suggest something in your executive board or in your association is you need to obtain the floor, which usually means you raise your hand or cough loudly, and you get recognized by the chairperson. And the chairperson in PTA terms is almost always the president. It doesn't have to be. If the president is unavailable, it can be your executive vice president or one of your vice presidents. Or in a committee meeting, it could be the chairperson of the committee, not necessarily the president of your PTA. And then you need to make the motion. I move. This is one of those parliamentary trivia questions that you will get asked. You don't say, I make a motion. You say, I move that we get rid of the mother-son, father-daughter dance and switch to a family dance. You are moving the body to do something different. So that is how you make the motion. Now you get someone from the floor to second the motion. Now here's something that's really interesting and important to understand. If you second a motion, that does not mean that you agree with the motion. And sometimes people hold back from seconding because they're afraid that that means that, oh, I am also in favor of getting rid of, this very important activity and moving it to something different. When you are seconding, all that you are saying is that you believe that we should debate this issue. So either you have a strong opinion for or against, but when you second, you are saying, you know what, I agree that discussion needs to happen in our meeting. So that's what happens when you second something. So I'm going to go back to, this is a nice, okay, oh, I went too far. So you second the motion, and then the chairperson restates the motion. So we have a motion on the floor to cancel the mother-son, father-daughter activities and to replace it with a family dance. Then there is debate or discussion, depending on how heated the issue is. So what happens when you debate and discuss is you hear from both sides. You hear from the people who agree that they want to make that change that the maker of the motion suggested, and you also hear from the people who don't. Now, as parliamentarian, your job is to make sure that this happens in a fair and balanced way. So you hear from one person who agrees and then another person who disagrees, back and forth. Now, let's say that everybody in your meeting is on the disagree side, and there's only one person that's on the agree side. You do not sit there and listen to the 20 people who disagree. All you do is you hear one agree, one disagree, and since there are no more matches, there's no more pairs of agree, disagree, debate is done. Now this is something that sometimes causes a little bit of conflict because all 20 of those people want to state their opinion. However, it really doesn't help your meeting at all because it's pretty clear from what you've seen that most people in this meeting are against that motion. So being fair and balanced doesn't mean that we sit there for 3 hours and let everybody have their say. We make sure that the fors and against are matched, and then we close debate, which is usually your chair's job, and you put the question to the vote. So then the chair restates the motion. We have a motion on the floor to have a family dance instead of these two others. All those in favor, aye. All those opposed, no. And then the chair says the nays have it. We are going to stick with the mother-daughter, or mother-son, father-daughter. Gosh, I don't know why I can't say that. Anyway, to help you in that process, I have a couple of tools for you. The first one is a motion slip, and this is something that secretaries will love you for if you have them. There are a couple different versions of it. This one is from Castaic Elementary, which is amazing, and they let me borrow it for training purposes, and I'm so thankful that they did that, so shout out to Castaic. This is where you get the person who's making the motion to actually write it down. This helps the chair so that they can know exactly what you want, and it also helps your secretary because they have to include this in the minutes as your official document of the meeting. So this is a really, really useful document. I also have for you, and again, you can find this on CAPTA or you can contact me. This is a motion chart, and I actually laminated them. On the flip side, I put the steps to making a motion. But this is really, really helpful because this tells you what requires a second, what doesn't, if you can debate things, yes or no, and what kind of a vote is needed, because sometimes in PTA we need more than the majority. Sometimes we need a 2/3 vote. For example, to adopt those bylaws, we need a 2/3 vote of the association. So all that is in here, and again, you can find it on CAPTA. It's the parliamentary motion chart, and if you search for it, it's really easy to find. So those are some really helpful things for you. Now, I was asked this in my training the other day, and so I want to make sure that we talk about it here. One of my parliamentarians asked me, what happens if in the association meeting somebody raises their hand and has some surprise motion, like I move that we have a huge carnival that lasts 3 days at our school to raise money for a new playground. Nobody on the executive board knew that this was coming. Nobody in the executive board talked about it, debated it. This is just a person off the floor who just stood up and had this great idea, this epiphany to have this event. Do you have to vote on it immediately? The answer is no. Surprise motions or surprises like that, you have a couple of different options. The first one is you can take it under advisement, take it back to your executive board and debate it there, and then bring it back at your next association meeting. The second thing you can do is refer it to committee. So let's say that you already have a carnival committee, you already do a school carnival. True, it didn't last 3 days, but you can refer that to the carnival committee, and that person can go speak to that committee and pitch their idea, and they can talk it over with that committee. So you can either refer it to committee, or you can table that and bring it back to your executive board so that you can talk about it. So don't feel like you're going to get backed into a corner and have to vote or debate on something when you're not prepared. You do have a couple of different options there. All right, going on to meetings, which we've kind of been talking about this whole time because that's what we do in PTA. We do meetings, and we do them really well, quite frankly. As a parliamentarian, you should probably have either your unit should either have a copy of the giant mega Robert's Rules of Orders or the revised and the brief. This will help you if a question comes up in your meeting and you don't know quite how to handle it. These two resources are really great for you to look things up. Also, PTA offers you the ABCs of Parliamentary Procedure, which is kind of a fun little cartoony version of like, how do you make a motion and all those good things. So all that is there. So you do have lots of references that you can use, plus the toolkit, plus your counsel, parliamentarian, plus me. We're always available to answer your questions, and the bylaws a lot of times will have the answer for you as well. So let's talk about meetings. We already talked about motion slips, which are very important. But at your meetings, I got this question at my last training. Someone said, you know what, our meetings, they're going 2 hours, 2.5 hours, 3 hours sometimes. Our executive board meetings are taking forever. Is there anything that we can do? And to be honest, you have a lot of different options. The one that I would recommend first is sitting down with your president saying, you know what, we're all volunteers. We're all moms and dads and parents and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and cousins. We have other things that we would rather do than sit in a meeting for 3 hours. So you need to be respectful of your volunteers' time. Try to keep your association or your executive board meetings 1.5 hours max. That's a lot of time to be sitting in a meeting. You can set time limits on your agenda and say, you know what, we're only going to give each committee chair 5 minutes. You know, how long can the box tops lady really talk? You know, I mean, it's an important program, but do you want her to give a 20-minute presentation on box tops every month? Probably not. You know, your fall fundraiser right now, that might be a really important, you might want to give them a little more time to talk, as opposed to, your yearbook person who really right now is just looking for pictures. They're not really doing much with the yearbook, so they don't need as much time on your agenda. So you can give everyone a time limit. This might be helpful too if you have a principal's report, because I have heard from my people that sometimes the principals like to go on and on and on and talk about all the great things at the school, which are really important, but we need to be succinct about it. So put time limits on your agenda. If you are just really, like, your meeting feels like it's going to go on forever, you can table things and talk about them next meeting. So you can table the box tops woman or the yearbook or things that are coming up that you don't really have to deal with right this second. You can table those to the next meeting. You always have to do your secretary's report. You always have to do your treasurer's report. Please don't table those things. Those are important, and you need to do those every month so that you can be fiduciarily responsible. But you know, some of the committee chairs and things, especially some of your standing committees that you know that you're going to see over and over, the restaurant night chairperson, they might not need to report every month, or to shorten things up, you can ask them to report to a vice president, and then ask that vice president to condense it all down and just give us what's the most important meat of this, you know, separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. So only tell us the really important things that we need to know. How much did we make at Menchie's? Not how great it was, because we all were there and we know it was great. But let's get to the bottom line here. I think that that's good for meetings for the moment. I'm hoping that somebody texts me with questions, because I'm starting to feel a little alone out here. But anyway, this is another really great handout that's good for presidents, secretaries, and really anybody in your unit. This is the agenda says, the president says, the member says, the minutes say. So these are things that you need to have in your agenda. This is what the president says. This is really great, especially for new presidents. It kind of gives you a little script here. And then this is what the secretary needs to record. Secretaries, remember, you don't need to record everything. You are not a court reporter, so you do not need to record absolutely everything that was said. You know, Heather said at 6:02 that she, you know, is sad and lonely that nobody's on this webinar with her. You just have to make sure that you get the main business. So Heather made a motion to get rid of the father-daughter dance, so that people know who to throw sticks at later. So that's all there. I think I did a little mini video about meetings, where I talked about keeping time with a little app on my clock. That's up on the 34th District PTA blog, so I'm hoping that some of you are going there. We're updating that pretty frequently with some really good information. So 34thdistrictpta.com has some really good information. Our Facebook page has some really good information as well. But the last thing that I have on my agenda for tonight is nominating and elections. And this feels like it's coming really early, but it's something that we need to think about all year. That's one of the big responsibilities that we have as PTA officers, is to kind of think about who's going to be replacing us and to start bringing them into the fold and sharing with them you know, exactly what the job looks like, so that nobody walks into something that they're not prepared for. We want everyone to succeed in PTA because we are all volunteers, and so we want everyone to find a position where they feel successful. So so nominating and elections really aren't that far away. It's something we need to keep in our mind all the time. So I want to talk today about the way nominating committee works. So I am going to try and bring up another slide here, and I appreciate so much everyone being patient and loving about this. So this is straight from CAPTA, and before I move on, I did get another question just texted to me about time limits for your meeting, so I want to address that really quickly, and I will come back so that you can see me. The question is, what is an appropriate way to set time limits for the principal? Again, be really open and honest about, we are all volunteers, we have soccer, we have, you know, church school, we have dance, we have a million other things that we need to get to, whether our meetings are first thing in the morning or our meetings are in the evening. We all have other things that we need to do. So the president, when you are typing up your agenda, be very clear and say, we are only going to spend 5 minutes per committee person. With your principal, again, when you as the president are talking to them, I would say, we are so excited about all the amazing things that are going on at the school. However, in our executive board meetings, could you synthesize all that down to 5 minutes, 10 minutes max? And that's a really long time for someone to talk, although I've been talking for the past 43 minutes. But so set a time limit. And then say, you don't feel like you have to fill it. I mean, if you only have 3 minutes of information to share about the school, don't feel like you have to vamp for the other 7. So just put it on the agenda, but give them a heads up, because you don't want your principal to have prepared a whole, Shakespearean soliloquy that's going to go 40 minutes, and then you tell them that they only have 5 and they have to figure it out. I know that my principal at Leona Cox, Miss Amanda Fisher, who's amazing, she would be thrilled if I said, you've got 5 minutes and that's it, because she's a mom too, and she's a wife too, and she has other things that she needs to get to. So keeping everyone into a time limit is just helpful for everybody. It really just focuses the discussion. It focuses, and let's say that something really big happens. Your Harvest Festival chair throws some wrench in it that changes the discussion, and you only gave her 5 minutes, but you really realize this is going to take 10. Table something else for later and stick with that topic, because right now the Fall Festival is really important. That's happening next month. So keep your agenda flexible, because some things are going to come up that are really important, but setting those time limits is really helpful. So again, give your principal the heads up that you're going to do it. Put it on the agenda so that it's very, very clear to everyone that this is the time you have. And people can gift their time to someone else if they want. I, as the Box Tops chair, really don't have anything to share this month because school just came back and I haven't heard, anything from Box Tops. I can gift my 5 minutes to the Harvest Festival because that's more important. That's totally acceptable, and you can say that, to your officers. But I hope that answered your question about appropriate time limits. So, all right, we're going to try to go back to nominations and elections. So, oh goodness, it always goes too fast for me. This is straight from CAPTA. The nominations process is extremely important and has tremendous influence on the future of your PTA for years to come. Think about it this way. When we have elections for the President of the United States, that's a pretty big and important job, and it doesn't just affect the country today. It usually has reverberations toward later. So if you aren't constantly thinking about the nominations and elections process at your school, you're leaving that up to a big, huge question mark. If you haven't started talking to people about who's going to replace you and you're the president, then you could have somebody stand up off the floor and say, sure, I'll do it. And that could either be a great thing or that could be a terrible thing. We all have been at schools where the PTA president is either really negative or is really unprepared, or they don't really have the time to dedicate, and so everything at the school kind of takes a downturn, and you feel it. You feel it as a parent. The kids feel it. Certainly the staff, the teachers, and the principals feel it too. We have to be thinking about this all the time so that all the work that we have done this year as a board can continue and carry on, and so that we leave our school better than we found it. I know that's very Girl Scouty, but I'm also a Girl Scout troop leader, so forgive me for saying that. But it really is very important that we're thinking about this all the time. So the first step when we're talking about nominations and elections is you need to consult your bylaws. I cannot tell you exactly when your election meeting is because everybody has picked a different month, and you all have a different day that your meetings are on. So usually elections happen April, May, sometimes as early as March. But I can't tell you that. You need to consult your bylaws. So Article 5 tells you which officers need to be elected and when elections take place. Article 6 tells the duties of the officers and explains what the nominating committee does. Now, this duties of officers is really important because your nominating committee needs to go over this with the people who they are nominating for the positions. It is terrible to have someone not understand the duties and then get in and feel completely overwhelmed. That's not fair, and that's not what we want to do. So this is something that is extraordinarily important. You need to elect, not select, not pick your closest friends, not grab a couple gals at drop-off and pick up. You need to elect in an association meeting, at least 60 days prior to your election meeting, a nominating committee. Now, your bylaws tell you how many people are in this nominating committee. It's usually anywhere from about 3 to 5 with a couple of alternates, but you need to elect those. Now, in my last training, someone said, what happens if no one raises their hand? Well, here's what usually happens. You get someone on the executive board to start it. It cannot be your president because they have nothing to do with the nominating committee, but maybe your secretary says, okay, I would like to serve on the nominating committee. So someone from the executive board usually breaks the ice, and then you can usually grab some parents from the audience who are willing to have their name put into the hat for this election. Usually you don't have a ballot because people aren't falling all over themselves to serve on the nominating committee. Usually if you have 5 spaces on your nominating committee, you get 5 volunteers and you say, all those in favor, aye. All those opposed, if you say no, we're putting you in. And they usually get elected by acclamation. I mean, everybody's like, sure, if you want to do it, go ahead. But if no one raises their hands, then I always tell my parliamentarians that you tell your president to just stop and wait. And the meeting doesn't go any further until you get however many people you need for that nominating committee to raise their hand. And it's hard as a president. It's hard to stand there and hear the crickets, but you start looking in the audience. You find that room parent, and you're like, come on, help us out. It's a short committee. You don't meet for very long. You start making eye contact with people, and you do not do anything else until you have those people. It's kind of uncomfortable, and you hope that it never happens to you, but sometimes it does. So just be prepared that you can't move on until you have those people in place. So it's really, really important to be confident, stand your ground, and wait to get those people. You have an election, like I said, you usually just read their names, all those in favor, aye, all those opposed, no, and now you have a nominating committee. If you were on the nominating committee last year, you are ineligible. So I'm sorry if you served last year, but you are done. You can be on it again the following year, but you just can't be on it this year if you served last year. You serve up until the election. The principal or their designee, sometimes they have their teacher representative or their vice principal, sits on as an advisor. This is really key because the principal is very aware of the parents on your campus, and they might have an idea for someone who is kind of off your radar but is very much on theirs. So that's really important. And again, your president has nothing to do with the nominating committee. Absolutely nothing. They don't sit on it. They don't talk to them. They do nothing. You do not, as a president, want to interfere with the nominating committee. As the parliamentarian, you call that first meeting of the committee. Here's my tip. And I have said this before to my parliamentarians. Don't let those people leave that meeting where you elected them. Don't let them leave. You take those 3 to 5 people, however many people your bylaws say, you move them over to a corner while the rest of the meeting keeps going, and you talk to them. You get their contact information. You have them elect a chair of the nominating committee. So among themselves, they say, who do you want to be the point person? And usually they all point to one person. And then you have them set their first meeting. This is really, this is one of those that I learned the hard way. I did not, with our council, when we elected our nominating committee, I did not grab them right away, and I never found them again. They all scattered to the wind. We couldn't find a date when we could get together. It was a giant mess. So tell those people after the election happens, everybody come see me over here, and you meet really quickly inside that association meeting so that you can make sure that you get them off on the right track. So I'm going to go back to my slides. Okay, and you hand them a lot of paperwork, which I will show you in just a minute. So the nominating committee has their chair. They meet. Now this is kind of interesting. They should be taking notes during their meetings, but those notes aren't read to executive board. They aren't shared at the association meeting. That's just so they kind of have record of what happened and how it happened. Who were we talking about as a good person for president? We were talking about Mrs. Smith, Mrs. Jones, and Mr. Willis. So, you know, and then when we meet again, we're like, oh my gosh, who were we talking about for president? I can't remember. You could pull up those notes and say, oh yeah, we were talking about Mrs. Smith, Mrs. Jones, and Mr. Willis. And then you can again, you know, say, well, who reached out to Mr. Willis? Who told him what the responsibilities are, and what did he say? Did Mr. Willis say he was willing to be the president? Who talked to Mrs. Jones? Who talked to Mrs. Smith? As the nominating committee, you try to fill the slate. You try to put someone in every position. But sometimes you can't. Sometimes it just doesn't work that way. Sometimes, though, when things are really great, you have more than one person want to be in a position. Sometimes you have 3 really qualified people who want to be secretary, or you have 2 great candidates who want to be treasurer. As the nominating committee, do you have to decide which one of them is better? The answer is no. You are allowed to submit a slate that has more than one name for a position. And then let the association vote and decide who they want. That's not your job as the nominating committee, but it is your job to make sure that they all understand the responsibilities so that we're not putting someone into a job that they're either not qualified or not prepared to do. So the report of the committee, which is a piece of paper with all of the names written on it for the people who are willing to serve in the elected offices, must be posted at least 28 days in advance of the election meeting. Now, the way you can post it is you can put it on your Facebook page, you can put it in a window in the office, you can put it in your newsletter, but you have to give the association at least 28 days notice of who's on the slate. Now, you can have nominations from the floor, so that slate could change, but you need to at least tell them that these are the people at the moment who are considering filling these positions. On election day, there is a script that the president will have a copy of, the parliamentarian will have a copy of, and you could even give a copy to your nominating chairperson. There are very clear, I mean, it is brilliantly scripted out. All you have to do is read when it says your name, and the parliamentarian reads some sections of the bylaws that pertain to elections, but the president is actually the person who conducts the elections. And this is kind of an interesting thing that my parliamentarians were very unclear about. They said, well, wait a minute, I'm the parliamentarian, don't I conduct the elections? No, we help facilitate them, but the president or the chair of the meeting is actually the one who conducts the elections. Be prepared, because you can have nominations from the floor, and you could also have a call for a ballot vote from the floor, so you need to be prepared for that. Again, it's really important that you follow that script, because it talks all about what it takes to be an officer, how you qualify. I know it seems redundant and repetitive because you do call the different candidates to stand multiple times, but families and parents need to understand who they're voting for. Your membership chair needs to have a membership list to ensure that everyone who is running and voting in the election has been a PTA member for at least 30 days. So if someone on the slate, everybody should have already been vetted and they should know that they have been a PTA member for 30 days. But if someone stands up from the floor and says, I'm willing to be the secretary, you need to have that list so that you can make sure that they have been a member for 30 days. In the event that there is a ballot vote, the tellers, which is the fancy PTA word for the ballot counters, count the ballots and report to the chair who has won. My suggestion for the tellers is that it could be the parliamentarian, and I would pick 2 random parents from the audience who are not on the ballot, hopefully diverse parents, maybe parents that you don't know that you've never seen before. This helps to make sure that it doesn't look like it's a little conspiracy of the parliamentarian and their friends. That is really important, that you make sure that you look totally above board and you don't look like a little cliquey club that's doing something secretive. So, okay, so nominating committee checklist. Again, this can be found on CAPTA. This is what you need to, what you as a parliamentarian should make sure that you're following along with. And then on the back of this page for me this is a report of the nominating committee where you put the different people who are running for the positions. Again, if you have 5 people who want to be president and they understand what it takes to be president, put all 5 names down. More power to you if you can get 5 people who want to do that. And then the nominating committee signs the bottom. This is what usually gets posted. This is what gets presented at your election meeting. And this is one of those official records that your secretary keeps. Here is the lovely script for conducting elections. And again, you can find this on CAPTA, and you can see the president says, and the parliamentarian reads different parts of the bylaws. Then the chairperson of the nominating committee has some things to say. It's all here. Make sure that before you have your elections that you go onto CAPTA and print up this script, because it's amazingly helpful, and without it you will be floundering up there. I have another question. I love this. Do we need to post when we will be electing the nominating committee? That's a really, really great question. I would give your people notice of when you're going to do that. For my unit, we do the nominating committee in November because we have so few meetings that we need. We have so few association meetings that we need to. We only have 4 a year, so we need to make sure that we give that nominating committee enough time. And we do put it on our agenda, which is always posted 10 days before your meetings. We put it on our agenda. Hey, we're going to be electing the nominating committee at the November meeting. It's helpful to tell them, and it's also helpful if you talk to a couple people before. You know, hey, the nominating committee is coming up, and I think that you'd be really great for it. So that's something that's really helpful too, to talk to a couple of diverse people, maybe someone from your ELAC committee or someone from your school site council, or people who know a lot of, you know, those really social parents who know a lot of different people and can help you form a really strong slate of candidates. So you might want to, you know, talk to a couple people ahead of time and just see if, you know, if they can come to the meeting so that they can consider being on the nominating committee. Well, I've had a lot of fun with our first webinar. It is now 8:02, so I'm a little bit over, and I'm sorry for that. But I want to thank you guys. I know that there were a couple of you because I was getting questions. First of all, I have to thank Sue Solomon, who said, let's take a chance and let's do this, Heather, with your crazy ideas. She's the 34th District President, and she encouraged me to do this, so I'm really thankful for that. And I could not have done this at all, or my monthly videos, without my amazing husband, Ron, who is sitting right across from me, being my tech guide through all of this. So thank you so much for joining us. If you found this to be valuable or helpful, if you could shoot me an email or text me and let me know. We're planning as a 34th District Board to do more of these in the future, so if there's a topic that you want us to cover, or if there's something you know, again, if you have a question that you think of later, or you're watching this not live, you're watching this later, please, please, please feel free to contact me. I'm going to put that slide up one more time so that you can see, not the congratulations, you've done the elections, this one with my contact information. Again, my name is Heather Ippolito. I'm the 34th District Parliamentarian. I thank you so very much for your time tonight. Again, I would love to hear from you, the good, the bad, the ugly, what you thought. We will have this available at the same link, and I will put links to my different PowerPoints and things so that you can look at those as well if you want more information to those things. So again, thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a wonderful night, and I hope that we will see you again on our next webinar.